Hey there, everybody. How we doing? I'm here with your week 3 civics video lesson and assignment walkthrough for the week. And yes, that's right. It is now a video lesson because this week we are going to be getting into some new content. It's not entirely new content because we've talked about the judicial branch a lot. We went over it back in like October when we looked at the 3 branches of government, but we're going to spend a little bit more time and go into a little bit more depth on it in this video lesson. And it's your assignment for the week. More on the judicial branch. Learning about that is what we're going to do for the week. We've covered the executive branch. We've covered the legislative branch. So we know the executive branch enforces the laws and the legislative branch carries them out. We know that the executive branch enforces the law and the legislative branch creates the laws, okay? They create the laws. Legislative branch, we learned last week. We relearned last week that it consists of Congress, which is bicameral, 2 houses, okay? The House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, last week when you guys answered your questions, I saw some of us got the great compromise out of, why do we have 2 chambers of Congress? The big answer that we're looking for is, it establishes a series of checks and balances. They can do separate jobs to balance each other out. But the big takeaway is that when they're founding our nation and they're drafting the Constitution in the late 1780s, the small states like Rhode Island are afraid that they're going to be dwarfed in government representation by big states like Virginia. So what they decide to do is they decide to have 2 houses, one that has equal representation. Everybody gets 2, no matter your size, and that's the Senate. We each have 2 senators. And in order to compromise and make the big states happy, because it's not their fault that they're more populated, they have the House of Representatives, which is based on the population of the state. Okay, so you have the small states that are happy with the equal representation in the Senate, and you have the big states that are happy with the representation based on population in the House of Representatives. Okay, that's why we call it the Great Compromise. And it really was great. Otherwise, they would have just called it the Good Compromise, but it was a pretty great compromise. So let me, once everybody stops laughing from that joke, let me just get us into this week's assignment. I'm going to share my screen with you here. And we look at Google Classroom here. I have A block up just because they're first in the order there, but it is the same for B block, as you guys know. So you see right here our heading, Remote Learning Week 3. You click on that. The judicial branch, there's a slides here, which I'm going to go through. This is going to be your video lesson, and then I'm going to walk you through your assignment for this week. It's very similar to your assignment from last week. Okay, I wanted to keep the continuity and keep things normal. I wanted to keep it very similar. So the structure of the assignment, very, very similar. So let's get started here with our slides. The judicial branch. Present here. Just load. I am outside, so I think the internet takes a little longer to load here. It is beautiful out. Hopefully, this is Sunday. It is not Saturday. I'm not filming this on Saturday because Saturday we got walloped with about 6 or 7 inches of snow. Hope everybody enjoyed that. Okay, good. The judicial branch. Here we go. Now, to recap, our 3 branches of government. Our legislative, they make the laws. It consists of Congress, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives. Our executive branch carries out or executes the laws. See, the word is right in there, execute, executive, okay? Good trick to remember. The executive branch is led by the President of the United States, and under him is the Vice President and his cabinet, okay? And the branch which we're going to be covering today to make sure to finish off the 3 branches is our judicial branch. Their job is to interpret the law. And the judicial branch is made up of the Supreme Court and lower federal courts. That is one of your questions on your assignment, okay? So when it says, what is the judicial branch made up of? The Supreme Court, lower federal courts, and not listed here, but I would welcomely accept it as your answer, Supreme Court justices, okay? The judges that preside over these cases, they are part of it. So the judicial branch interprets the law, and it is made up of the Supreme Court, the lower federal courts, and the justices that man these courts, okay? There are 9 Supreme Court justices, okay? And this is the Supreme Court over here. Now, we talked a lot in class earlier about why are there 9? Why is there an odd number? It's so they never have an even amount, because then you could have them decide on a case and have it be 4 and 4, okay? You can't have that happen. You have to have an odd number of justices, okay? They serve a life term. When they are, and they're not elected, nobody goes to the polls and votes for Supreme Court justices. Nobody does that. They are appointed by the President of the United States. Okay, that's a very important part of this. In Congress, they are elected. The President, elected. The judicial branch, not elected, appointed. Okay, so that's a pretty big difference. They serve a life term unless they are impeached by Congress. Okay, if they do something illegal, they can be impeached, okay, just like the president can. They can declare laws passed by Congress unconstitutional. This is their check in the check and balance system, is that they can declare laws passed by Congress unconstitutional. They can overrule lower courts. So if somebody appeals, and I will show you guys the ladder later on, that as you appeal and you go up the ladder, the Supreme Court is your very last shot, okay? If you're appealing a decision and you get to the Supreme Court and it does not go your way, that's the last stop on the last stop on the train is the Supreme Court, okay? Now, the Supreme Court, do they hear a ton of cases? No, okay? They pass down about 80 rulings a year, an entire year, and they get like 8,000 cases sent to them, okay? So they get a ton of cases that are sent to the Supreme Court to see if they'll hear these disputes, these appeals that people have, but they only hear about 80 of them a year, okay? So very, very slim chance that a case will even get to the Supreme Court, okay? There is no constitutional requirement to become a justice, okay? You know that to be the president, you have to be a U.S. citizen, okay? You have to be 35 years old, okay? To be a member of Congress, there are stipulations as well to be a member of Congress. Technically, no constitutional requirement to become a Supreme Court justice, which also I find very interesting. Again, they're appointed by the president. And once they're appointed by the president, they have to be approved by the Senate. You need 51 senators to say, yes, we agree. We appoint this Supreme Court, we approve this Supreme Court justice, okay? So the president can't just say, hey, I want him to be Supreme Court justice, and boom, he's a Supreme Court justice. Not how it works. They have to be approved by the Senate, just the Senate. The judicial branch's abilities to determine laws or decisions by the government unconstitutional, their balance, is called judicial review, okay? We're gonna talk more about judicial review next year in Global One. Hopefully you have me for it. But when we talk about Thomas Jefferson as president, during his presidency, there is a Supreme Court ruling by John Marshall in the case of Marbury versus Madison. Okay, and in that case, John Marshall determines that it is unconstitutional for Congress to conduct the act that they have done, okay? I'm not gonna get into Marbury versus Madison right now. I'm gonna keep it to the judicial branch, okay? We'll talk about it next year. It's also in one of the videos that's on here. Gives you a quick little background on it, okay? But in that case of Marbury versus Madison in 1803, Chief Justice John Marshall, Supreme Court Chief Justice, establishes judicial review by stating that the act by Congress is unconstitutional. Now, these are our Supreme Court justices currently right here. This is Chief Justice John Roberts here. This right here is a list of our Supreme Court justices. John Roberts is your Chief Justice. He is the head of the 9, and that is him right here, okay? Our other justices are Clarence Thomas, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Samuel Alito, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh is our newest Supreme Court justice, and this is Brett Kavanaugh right here. He was appointed by President Donald Trump last year, and he was approved by the Senate after quite a bit of back and forth. It was not a straight up appointment. There was quite a bit of buzz around that, his appointment and approval. Okay. Now, how the Supreme Court works. The United States Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. It's located in Washington, D.C., and it is the head of the judicial branch of the federal government. It is responsible for deciding whether laws violate the Constitution. They are in session from early October until late June or early July. Now, how does a case get to the Supreme Court? It's what we talked about before, and I'll have another image for you here which shows the chain of succession here. But most cases reach the court on appeal. An appeal is a request for a higher court to reverse the decision of the lower court. Most appeals come from federal courts. They can come from state courts if a case deals with federal law. Now, we know we're going to talk in a few weeks about state versus federal government. They're two different things. The federal government is the more powerful of the two, but the states have their own, their own court system, okay? Their own Senate, their governor, okay? So states and federal run it a little bit different. And if you look here, state trial courts, and then it goes to the state court of appeals, and then it goes to the state Supreme Court. Here, it would go from a federal trial court. If you're in the federal branch of this, it would go to the federal U.S. Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court. This here is another chart to show you this. This right here is the federal side of things. Okay, so it goes from the U.S. District Courts to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and then the request for review gets put up to the Supreme Court. If your case starts in the state court system, it starts in the state trial court, and then if you lose an appeal, it goes to the state appellate court, appeal. Then it could go to the state Supreme Court, and then if it needs to be reviewed further, it could end up in the Supreme Court of the United States. Pretty cool chart right here. It lays it out pretty simply for you, okay? Now, checks and balances in the federal government. I'm not going to go over all of these because we've gone over this a lot, and I don't want to make this video too long, but it shows each branch's power and their checks on power. So we'll go down here to the judicial branch, and the judicial branch interprets and applies the law. They can declare laws passed by Congress and acts taken by the executive branch unconstitutional. That is called judicial review. Established in what court case? That's right, Marbury versus Madison. Good. Now, Congress can propose constitutional amendments to overturn judicial decisions. That is the check of the legislative branch on the judicial branch. That is their check on the judicial branch's power. Congress can also impeach and remove federal judges. That is another check that Congress has on the judicial branch, okay? This right here is another chart. We're not going to go over it. It's another checks and balances chart that just shows how these branches keep each other in check. Now, we know that it's a very important checks and balances, that each branch has a little bit of power over the other branches to make sure that we don't end up in a tyrannical situation where one branch has all the power. One branch, one person. Can't have that happening. Okay, that's sort of the biggest takeaway when they're drafting the Constitution, that these branches work in harmony and work together and balance the power. Okay, so this right here is a checks and balances diagram for you. And again, it's important to remember that checks and balances are different than separation of power. Separation of power just means that each branch is separate from the other and has their own distinct powers, meaning the legislative branch passes the laws and creates them. The judicial branch interprets them and judges upon them. And the executive branch executes or applies, carries out the laws, okay? So that's separation of power versus checks and balances. I know a lot of people get confused with that. So try to think of it, that way. Separation of powers, each one is separate, okay? Checks and balances, they all check each other's power, okay? And just another chart right here showing you some checks and balances there. Now, let me close out of that. Let me get you to your assignment for the week. You come here into remote learning week 3 and you see right over here your assignment, Civics week 3. And remember, when you go to upload your assignment, you are going to upload it right here to remote learning week 3. You're going to attach it to this assignment and you're going to be graded on the same rubric you were graded the first 2 weeks, accountability and personal responsibility. 1 through 4, same thing. 1 is not yet meeting the standard, 2 is you're approaching the standard, 3 is you're meeting the standard, and 4 is you are exceeding the standard. Okay, that means that you are doing a really thoughtful job with it. You are putting time and effort into your answers. They're reflective, they're thoughtful, they're informative, and creative too. Okay, so we hop over here to our assignment, remote learning. Week number 3, the judicial branch. Your mission for week 3 is to learn about the judicial branch. We talked about it briefly earlier in the year, and we've covered in depth the other 2 branches, executive and legislative. So this will wrap up our 3rd and final branch. Right here is going to be a link to this video right now that you are watching. Okay, so if you need to go back, get any information from the lesson that I just gave on the judicial branch, that link will be right here. It will also be over here in classroom when I write up the details, you know, go over the assignment for the week. And I give you guys my email address, tell you when our class Zoom time is, all of that is being here. There'll be a link to this video, okay? Now, there's some additional things that I want you guys to watch. This is a 6-minute video and this is a 3-minute video. It's 9 minutes worth of videos, not too bad, okay? So this is the slideshow that I just went over. You have access to that. Outlining the role and structure of the judicial branch. It'll help you answer the questions you have for the week. And there's also this crash course video on the structure of the court system. It's the same crash course structure video, the same guy from last week. I think he does a pretty good job of going over it. So I linked that. It's about 6 minutes long. And then to further help answer your questions, I love this video right here. It's by the History Channel. It's 3 minutes long, very short, very to the point, and it talks about Marbury versus Madison. Win-win, okay? So that is in here as well. This is to help enrich and to sort of extend your understanding of the judicial branch, to really round out, give you more context. So remember, as you're watching any of these videos, this one right now, the crash course, the History Channel one, pause, rewind, use closed captions, so that way you get all the information. Your assignment for the week is to answer these 10 questions, okay? The first 8 are short answer. I'm gonna go over them right now really quick, and the last 2 are open response. Some of us did a really nice job giving some thought and going into detail. Some of us only wrote about 1 sentence in the open response this week. Do your best to add a little bit to it, okay? Do your best. I know circumstances are different. I know times are tough. But if you have the time, give it a little thought, okay? Be thoughtful, be reflective, okay? I would love to see it. Don't just mail it in, okay? So right up here, section 1, what is the judicial branch made up of? What are those entities from the slideshow that we talked about? What is the judicial branch made up of? Question 2, the Supreme Court is made up of how many Supreme Court justices? How many are there? How long of a term do Supreme Court justices serve? Question 4, where is there more opportunity for appeal? This is out of your video on the crash course. State courts or federal courts? Also, if you look at the chart, that will help you answer that question too. Okay, so which is it? Is it states or federal courts that there's more opportunity for appeal? How many federal circuit courts are there? That is not in the notes that I just gave you. That's a little bit deeper information. That is in the crash course video as well. What is the final court of appeals? What is the last train stop, if you will, in the appeal system? Okay, that one I'm sure you know off the top of your head. A few of these I'm sure you know off the top of your head. How many decisions does the Supreme Court usually hand down each year? Okay, I went over that in the video. It's also in the crash course video, I believe, as well. Question 8, which Supreme Court justice's ruling established that it was the judicial branch's job to interpret the constitutionality of the law? That question is a mouthful. But what it's asking is, what is the name of the Supreme Court justice who handed down the ruling, okay, in Marbury versus Madison in 1803 that established judicial review, meaning that the judicial branch could interpret the constitutionality of laws? What was his name? Okay. And your open response. Question 1. These ones I want a little more thought. Why is judicial review important? Why is it important that the Supreme Court has the ability to declare laws and acts of the government unconstitutional? Why is that important? Okay. And the last one, the last open response question. Now that you've studied all 3 branches of the government, what do you think is the most important branch and why? Okay. I asked a very similar question last week. If you still think it is the same branch from last week, you can use a similar answer. Rewrite it, please. Do not just copy and paste what you wrote last week. But now that you have more information on the judicial branch, which one do you think is the most important? And I got a few of you that wrote the judicial branch last week, which was pretty cool, because people usually say the executive or the legislative. So it was cool to see some judicial. Hopefully this changed some minds, okay? Now, this assignment is due Friday, April 24th. Make sure you post it to Google Classroom right over here, right in your week 3 assignment. Post your assignment here. And again, it will be graded on this rubric, okay? That is all I have for you this week. Again, this was a little bit more important because this was a video lesson as well as an assignment walkthrough, okay? There's a little more meat to this one this week, okay? Because I'm teaching you some new stuff. So to that end, hopefully you can make it to the Zoom meeting on Tuesday morning. A block is 9 to 9:45. B is 10 to 10:45. Same link. It's a recurring meeting. So the same link you used to get to it last week, you use that link again. Okay. I will repost it on Tuesday morning. You do not have school tomorrow, which is Monday. It is Patriots Day. So I am still going to post this tonight. It is Sunday. And I'm going to post this tonight in case anybody wants to get an early start. But technically tomorrow is a no school day. We were supposed to have April vacation, but instead we're going to do school this week. So if you guys have any questions, you can email me. You can check into our class session on Tuesday. You can check in with me on office hours on Friday from 12 to 1. That is also a recurring meeting. Or you can refer back to this video and the crash course in the History Channel one. Okay, plenty of options for you guys to reach out if you need help. Okay, so I hope you guys had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed all that snow yesterday. And I hope that you are all healthy, safe, and doing well. I miss seeing you guys every day. I genuinely mean that. So hopefully this is over sooner rather than later. Okay. Hope to see you guys on Tuesday at the class meeting. We will go over some of this stuff again, and I will check in. I just like seeing you guys. I like saying hi, seeing what you've been up to, and chatting. Okay. I will see you guys later this week. Any questions, email me. Bye, guys.